Hello, it's Romanosky from Calgary, Canada, and time for another series of videos, this time on an atypical car, for me at least, a 1977 Chrysler Cordoba. Why do I have this car? Why? Why? That's a good question, and it's a good segue to lead me into restoration mistakes. You know, we all love this hobby, or those of us that are collectors love this hobby. Most of the time our collector cars work out for us pretty well. Sometimes they don't, and you just got to take your lumps. This is one such example. So I'll turn this camera around and let's go through a 1977 Chrysler Cordoba, and let's go through my own somewhat painful journey with this car, with the aim of maybe helping you not to repeat my mistakes. Okay, so the story goes, I was helping a client out with some cars that belonged to his late stepfather who had passed on. And I came to view this car and another one in an underground parkade. Both cars had not moved in 11 years. One of them was the E-Type, which you can see in some of my other videos, and this was the other one. And the owner said, well, and I don't know what to do about this Cordoba. My father-in-law had it, and he just parked it at the airport and used it to, when he flew into Calgary, he just, or he flew into Medicine Hat actually, he would use it to drive from the airport to his home. It had sat outside in the sun, and the paint is, you know, heavily weather baked, and there's some interior damage too. But it's a one-owner car, and it was an original car. Now, when I saw it, it was underground, a dimly lit parkade with 11 years of dust on it, and we didn't have the keys. However, you know, it was a one-owner Chrysler Cordoba with what promised to be low mileage, and I thought, well, that's interesting. I never had an American car before. That's kind of fun. And of course, you know, guys of my generation would remember the TV ads from, you know, Ricardo Montalban from Fantasy Island fame. You know, I don't think anybody ever accused a Cordoba as being a particularly, you know, wonderful car, although people did say it was a good-looking car. But it was an example of celebrity endorsement that had been extremely successful. They sold over 1 million of these cars, and the twin to this, you know, geez, I even forget the name of it, but whatever, they had several versions of this body. It didn't sell at all, but because of Mr. Montalban, this was a hot seller, and it was a luxury car, personal luxury car at a good price. Okay, so there's a few different versions of the car. In the 80s, the downsized one was just terrible. This is the original version, which I think came out in 75. And then for 78, it kind of got the square headlights. And you know, most people prefer this one. Okay, so I thought, oh, well, you know, the car is, you know, it's covered in dust. It's a dimly lit parkade. I don't know a thing about it. I can't even see in it or get in it. The dust is so caked on the windshield that I couldn't even see it. And I thought, oh, perfect. That's a perfect thing for me to do. I'm going to buy a Cordoba. You know, and, you know, all the logic which I give in the normal course of my business, dealing in high-end cars, goes out the window. And it's like, that sounds fun. I don't need to know anything about it. And it had the promise of low kilometers and the promise of, you know, nobody else has touched it before. And I thought, well, you know, I know all these barn find Bugattis are getting millions of dollars at auctions, even more than a restored car. And there's no barn find Bugattis in Calgary, or barn find anything else, I don't think. But here's a barn find Cordoba, even though it's not really a barn find, it's a parkade find. Anyway, so I bought the car, and then I thought, okay, well, you know, I can get parts anywhere for this car. It's an American car. I'll just go to Napa, get all the parts, I'll get it running. Maybe I'll have a contrarian car for the cars and coffee, where everybody brings their Lamborghinis. And this would be a hoot to drive in there, just, you know, especially and park it beside maybe somebody who's taking themselves a little bit too seriously. And I thought, yeah, I'll have a barn find, weathered, you know, Chrysler Cordoba. That'll be cool. So I towed the thing out, and the first thing I did is I sent it to the guys who work on some of my old cars at Integra Tire. Keith, he's retired now, but he's an old guy there and would have worked on these things. He said, go through the car, Keith, just change everything. All the fluids, all the belts, all the hoses, get this thing running. It hasn't been run in 11 years. Let's just get it all running and see what we got. And we looked at it in the hoist, and it was very clean underneath, very, very not rusty at all. With the exception of the rear quarters, there's some rust there, but the frame rails and everything else, floors were great. So we thought, oh, terrific. So I got that bill, and it was $3,000, and I drove it around, and I was like, oh yeah, well, the interior is just a little ratty, and I sent that to Jamie at CR, so I'll clean that all up, and then it's another $1,000, and then, okay, well, let's get a windshield. I'm sure they're only a few $100s. Well, they're not a few $100s. There's no windshields for Cordoba. It took me 6 months to get a windshield. I finally found one out of the States. It was $1,500. I only paid $1,500 for the car, and the windshield's $1,500, okay? And then I went to the Chrysler, I thought I'd go to the Cordoba, the forums on the internet and get the Cordoba, suppliers, and the Cordoba this, and the, join the Cordoba club and do all this stuff. Well, guess what? There are no Cordoba suppliers. There is no Cordoba club. There are no internet forums for Cordobas. There are no parts for Cordobas, because nobody cares about Cordobas. If you wanted a Chrysler 300, you can get anything you want. If you want a muscle car, you can build the whole thing from scratch with, aftermarket parts. But you want a Cordoba? You are out of luck. You want information on a Cordoba? Out of luck. You're out of luck on everything. So that was kind of a rude surprise. And then the parts weren't cheap either, and that was another rude surprise. So anyway, but now what am I spent $1,500 for the car, and I spent $3,000 just to go through the servicing, and then $1,500 for the window. Well, I can't, I'm so far into it, I can't stop now, can I? No, because now the transmission leaks, and we get in there and we find out that we got to redo some seals in the transmission because it leaks, and then the windshield starts fogging up, and I'm like, oh no, what's wrong with this car? And of course it's the heater core. Well, the water sits in that, and it rusts out over time, and that's not an easy job. So then we had to do the heater core. I think that was a couple $1,000. And then, it was just on the old tires, and I'm not going to cheap out on tires, so it was, new Michelin tires on it, and I did spring for Cocoa floor mats, which they had to make a pattern for because nobody's ever put Cocoa floor mats, which I do for all the Porsches and Mercedes and stuff. This curious thing was a leather shirt that I had leftovers from the 80s that I repurposed as a seat cover. Anyway, I think it's kind of funny with its fake. That's not included in the sale. I have to take that back with me, sorry. And then I had a Che Guevara burlap bag, which I thought suited the car too. Not included in the sale, sorry about that.
My very first car was a 1979 Chrysler Cordoba.
And I'm doing a video right now, and I was going to say...
I apologize for that.
No. I was going to say, here's our jogger here, that anytime you take a Cordoba out, somebody comes and says, I had a Cordoba. I knew somebody who had a Cordoba. My friends in high school had a Cordoba.
My very first car.
You need another Cordoba.
Yeah.
This one is for sale. You should buy this Cordoba. Anyway, so then I get this spreadsheet now, and it's like $11,500. Really? Did I just spend $11,500 on the Cordoba? And I did. And then it's like, okay, well now I got to address the body on the car, and okay, so that's going to be another 10 grand. Now I'm at 20, and well, maybe I'll do some other stuff on the car. So, okay, so I'm going to have a $25,000 Cordoba here, and it's like, I don't want a Cordoba. I never would have bought a Cordoba. It just happened to be there. I thought it was like a good idea at the time. Anyway, so let me just show you some of this rust in the rear quarters, and you can see that needs to be replaced. And so what I did is I bought and a little bit there too, I bought new rear quarters, not new, but from a dry Arizona car, along with a lot of the interior pieces. So I tried to find all the pieces that were not good on this car, and then buy them with the aim of putting it back together, and you can see that that's shot there too. Okay, so but I don't want a Cordoba. I've got too many projects already. It was a whim. It was supposed to be cheap. It was supposed to be fun. It wasn't supposed to cost $25,000. I don't want a $25,000 Cordoba. And so there I'm stuck, and so I'm selling the car. And now what happens when you get halfway into a project and then you want to bail on it? Well, you lose lots of money. That's what happens. What is the takeaway here? On this car, on a few other cars at work, where, you know, most of the cars I touch I do okay on, but the ones that I haven't, the single thread that goes through them, the reasons why they didn't turn out so well, is this: a lack of a really comprehensive inspection and evaluation when you first get the car prior to spending any money on it. I can't emphasize that enough. Before you just start ordering parts and getting all excited, you need to thoroughly go through the car piece by piece, cost it out, figure out if it is what you want or not, get an accurate appraisal for the vehicle before you start spending money. Don't just buy it, get so excited, and then get in deep. And then the second mistake is that, well, when you're into it, and you know that it's not getting any better, and you know that you've made a mistake, well, don't just keep going. I mean, just stop. You know, I think for me at least, there's this sort of pride involved where it's like, oh, well, I'm not going to give up on this car. I mean, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep going until it's done. Well, if I lose money, I lose money. And then I think, oh, what am I doing? It just gets worse. So that's my best advice. This car is a solid driver. It's registered in Alberta. It has passed the safety. It shifts, stops, drives, steers, all the electrical work. AC does not work. I didn't bother with that. I didn't even try. Other than that, it's like a good, reliable car, fresh tires, fresh windscreen. And for the next guy who then thinks, oh, I found this car and got it 50 cents on the dollar or whatever it is, for the next guy it might make sense. And my hope is that somebody who wants a Cordoba, who will take this, and I'll take my lumps. Somebody can get a good head start on a restoration and kind of save this car, because it's just a one owner, kind of a cool old car, an old man's car, and it was just kind of too good to throw away. It kind of deserved to be saved, and so I think that somebody should do that. Okay, and here is the driving video from the Cordoba. This is the first time I've driven it this spring, and we can see that it has oil pressure. It is not overheating. There's some gas in it, which on this car affects the value. And it accelerates smoothly. If you notice the left indicator light, when I give it lots of gas, it lights up. That is not an electrical short. That is a primitive indicator that you're using too much fuel. If you drive nicely, that light doesn't come on, and if you drive fast, it comes on. Okay, so let's go around a roundabout here just for fun, and there's no noises in the steering, and the car handle's actually not bad. I mean, of course, the steering is just a feather light, but there's no odd clunking or any sort of noises. You'll have to wait for me, BMW. I'm in a big Cordoba. Okay, and you can see the light up here on the corner, and I'm driving. If I want to brake, the car's brakes were serviced, and I'm braking, and it's not pulling to one side. Okay, accelerate again, the little light comes on. I've got my little Chrysler coin on the front to remind me that I am in a near luxury car. We have the chronometer, which works. The 8-track player does work, although it did just chew up one of my 8 tracks left over from the previous owner. And braking for a stop. Signal lights work. And of course the car passed a safety in Alberta and is road registered, titled in Alberta, Canada. Okay, exhaust is quiet and the drivability is good. These cars have the lean burn engine, which is much maligned, an early form of electronic ignition, but it works okay here. You know, the lights work, the washers work. Got that kind of weird little pause in them, and then I think if I go down here, the squirters work. I know wipers on these are complicated for some reason. Okay. All right, so that works, and my defrost work. The car has lots of heat. Of course, when I got it, one of the first things to go was the heater core, which is never a fun job in any car because it lives in the very center of the car. Okay, the air I did not bother with. All the equipment's there. You know, I'm sure, you know, if you get lucky, you might just get it recharged and it might work, or, you know, it could very well be leaking and you might need to get into it a bit more. We have a smooth idle. I'm showing kilometers right now at let me think about that, 112,143 kilometers. So it's only a 5-digit odometer. And you know, it's actually a nice car. There's lots of room in it, and it's smooth and comfortable, and it really is kind of a unique piece. But anyway, I just wanted this section to be okay. Yes, it runs, it drives, it doesn't smoke, it does not overheat, the brakes work, and like I said, I spent over $10,000 on it just sorting out the reconditioning, so that, you know, this would be a reliable car. And I let it sit all winter and it fired right up. I had the battery out of it for the winter. I just put the battery in and fired right up, no problem. So it's you know, it should be a reliable car for somebody. Okay, thank you very much, Lawrence Romanosky. Let's do a video shot of the engine bay here, and we have the 400 CI V8. Now there was a 360 as well. This is the bigger engine. This is also related to the 440. So this is the big block. Okay. We can see that it has an early example of electronic ignition, which works perfectly fine in this car and doesn't have a problem. Okay. Never had a problem with it. I know in some climates, in some places they did. And a popular retrofit is new carbs and a different intake manifold. However, this one works good, and the engine is smooth. It doesn't make any noise, any unusual noises. There's no excess valve train noise or squeaks from the ancillary components. We did all the fluids. We did the belts. We did the hoses. We rebuilt the carb, part of the carb, the 4-gallon carb we rebuilt, and then as well we went and did the you know, the brake fluid and so on. Transmission was serviced, and new fluids and new filters were put in that. Basically any rubber part that we could find that was a consumable was replaced, and with all the tune-up items and distributor cap, yeah, was all redone. So there you go. I'll just let you listen to that. And then coming out of the tailpipe is, you know, it burns. When you start it, it's slightly rich, and you wouldn't want to leave it running in your garage. But there's no blue smoke that comes out of the car. Okay. So anyway, it runs and drives well for what it is. I know of no drivability or mechanical problems. I didn't do anything with the AC compressor, so you may, if you want that to work, you know, you'll need to at least recharge it if not just work on the I didn't bother with it. And the piece de la resistance of this barn find Cordoba is the working 8-track cassette player included in the purchase price of this vehicle. You will get the 8-track for the soundtrack for American Graffiti, but it does not stop there. You can have Cab Driver by the Mills Brothers and Mighty Big to Me by Alex Fraser, and I think there's a couple others in the trunk that come with this car, okay?